Good evening, everyone. I'm Morgan Boyle, Manager of Adult Programming at the New York Public Library, and I'm thrilled to welcome everyone to the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library and to this beautiful space overlooking Fifth Avenue. The library and WNYC launched this partnership in 2020, and since then it's been a wonderful opportunity for New Yorkers to come together and share their love of reading. While you're here, I hope you'll get a library card, check out a few books, or learn more about the other programs we have in this space and throughout this building. We'd love to see you again. And don't forget to stop by our check-in desk after the program, fill out a short audience survey, and get a free prize. Everyone loves free swag. For those watching virtually, I welcome you as well and hope you have an opportunity to visit us soon. Beyond that, come check out everything that NYPL has going on right now, including programs and classes for all ages, exhibitions like A Century of the New Yorker, which just opened across the street, and more, all for free. Visit nypl.org or sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date on everything the library is doing. Now, I know you're all excited to get started. Tonight, we welcome author Imani Perry, author of this month's selection, Back in Blues, a surprising and beautiful meditation on the color blue and its fascinating role in Black history and culture. We'll also be joined by incredible artists, Bilal and Esperanza Spalding, who will share a special performance. I want to thank Allison Stewart and the WNYC team for being such amazing partners on the book club, and we hope you enjoy tonight's program. Thank you.
How are you all doing? I hope you're having a good night. Yep. So a little bit of housekeeping. See these mics here? These are for our nice engineers in the back, so they'll be able to hear you on the radio on WNYC when this airs, so let us know that you're out there. Silence your cell phones. We don't want that on the air so much, but you can take pictures, tag us, put it on Instagram, all that kind of good stuff. We'll also send around mics about 20 minutes in, so put on your thinking caps. See, she's silencing her cell phone. Good job. And stick around because Imani will sign books at the end, and we'll have our March Get Lit selection. So without any further ado, Imani Perry is a professor at Harvard University and a MacArthur Fellow. She won the National Book Award for her last book, South to America, A Journey Below the Mason-Dixon to Understand the Soul of a Nation. Thanks to our nice partners at the New York Public Library, 1,489 of you were able to check out a copy of Black and Blues. Please welcome Imani Perry. And we're dressed in blue.
We're in blue.
I debated it, and I said, of course we'll dress in blue. How did you get the idea to focus on a color for your book?
So, in some ways, the book chose me as opposed to me choosing it. I began noticing how frequently contemporary Black artists were using the color blue, blue-toned skin and large swaths of blue, and then that sort of took me on a journey. I often say that my grandmother's bedroom, where the book begins, was in some ways a portal for the way that I understood the world. And that room was painted blue. And at the beginning of the book, I tell a story about my baby cousin who also loves blue, and Ian and I asked him which was his favorite color, blue, and he pointed to the ceiling, a place where a tile had been, from when the ceiling had been dropped, a tile had been removed, and you could look through to see the original color of the ceiling, and it was this brilliant sky blue, and he said, that one. And so it was just this, so that sense of it being a portal and being surrounded in blue, and in that space, with her, with my family, we experienced incredible beauty, but we also experienced the blues. It was an intimate space where you confronted the moments of anguish and suffering as well as joy. And so it just beckoned me. And then everywhere I looked through the history, blue was there,
Why did you think it would be a useful lens to look at history?
Well, I think that we have been in a season for where we've been making these arguments for the meaning of history and these arguments for the significance of African American culture, and I wanted to write a book that wasn't an argument, but that was instead a journey, and that journey allowed to use something that engages multiple senses, because of course blue and the blues means that you're engaging both the visual and the sonic landscape, and we have such an extraordinary musical tradition, and that journey, I wanted to ask questions like, okay, real hard questions. What was it like to be a person who was a thinking person, who had a position in society, and then to be sold? What was it like to cross the Middle Passage? What was it like to work in the fields? And what was it like to, to stare down dogs in Jim Crow, Alabama, like my family did? All of those things. And each time I asked that kind of question and tried to engage it in terms of my senses, there's blue there, whether we're talking about the skies and the ocean and the blue-green sharks that are following behind slave ships because they're hoping that the people who are tossed overboard, they might consume them, or we're talking about the blue of police officers' uniforms. Blue is ever present, and so I said, well, if I'm going to tell these stories, I'm going to engage people's senses fully, and not just engage people's senses fully, but tell both the heartbreak and the devastation, but also the incredible beauty. How do people keep getting back up? How do they keep imagining? How do they keep creating such that we can go on? It just was there. To allow the story to unfold as opposed to try to make an argument actually enabled me to use color. And, we only, as Toni Morrison said, the writers we only have these 26 letters, and we have to sort of flip them around and try to find a way to make all those senses come alive. It was just, but that is what I think is necessary to tell the story true, is to try to make those senses come alive. So,
Did you have an audience in mind, a particular reader?
I didn't have a particular reader. I mean, I'm always, everything that I write is profoundly shaped by my grandmother, and then also by my children. And so I am trying to write in a way that honors her and write towards a world that is closer to what my children deserve and she don't have. And so, but I want, and there are many things in the book that will resonate in very particular ways with Black folks. But there's also, it's an invitation to what I think is such an extraordinary tradition, and a tradition that all human beings can learn a great deal from.
What did the research process look like for this book?
It was wild. So, because there's lots, there's like, for people who haven't seen, it's like there's dental journals in the book, and there's archaeological digs, and there's, and there's color theory, and, it's all these things. So it was lots of pieces of paper and lots of files and lots of rabbit holes, and then sorting and pruning and trying to get the pieces right in relation to each other. So lots of sort of heartbreaking moments where I was like, I can't tell this story, right? So it's like the research process was one thing, and it was just like vast quantities of material, and then I'd get obsessed with something, and then I would be collecting materials on that particular thing.
Okay, tell me about one rabbit hole you went down.
Okay, well, the dental journal part, right? So there was this lore that if a Black person had blue gums and they bit you, they would kill you. It's old fat, right? And it's a tricky one, and I write about because it's like it hinges on this idea of Black people as dangerous and threatening, but it also has an element, and Black people shared it, of a kind of power, right? That, like, if you imagine, because this is in the context of the Deep South, Black people are in very close proximity to wealthy white people. So you can imagine this with this lore, someone could just turn around and bite you and kill you, the person who is
Take care of your baby.
oppressing you. Right. Yes.
Yeah, right.
So it's this sort of construct as this mystical power. So I was like, oh, this is really, so I knew this lore, and I'm looking for it, and I find it in Faulkner's writing. I hadn't seen anybody write about it before. I found it in all kinds of folk tales. I found it in the Atlantic archives. I found it also in and certainly in like sort of the lore that came from Black people. But I also found it in dental journals where there were dentists who were saying, we've heard this story that like blue-gummed Black people can kill you if they bite you, and we are looking for evidence. And, it's sort of fascinating. For me, it's also important. It was an important little detail because we tend to sort of treat like the hard science and medicine is just subjectively true, but so much of when I was doing research in medical journals in various ways in this period, so much of it is still experimental. So it's just it's bizarre as a formulation. Now, of course, just to like sort of clean this story up a little bit, we know now that human beings' bites are dangerous because of bacteria. So anybody's bite can potentially kill you, right? But it was to think about what was that lore about. So yeah.
I was so moved by the idea that blue flowers were where Black people had been buried.
Yeah.
I never knew that before.
Yeah, it's amazing that, enslaved people did not have headstones, as we know. And for the most part, there's some few exceptions to that. I'm thinking of one. There's a couple exceptions, but for the most part, did not have headstones, and also could not have their traditional burial rituals. And so people would, have to have those in some ways that were like under the cover of night, or to sort of craft new ways of having burial rituals. But one of the things that enslaved people did in the Upper South was to plant periwinkle where their people had been buried. And it was it's just such a gorgeous way to remember, because they're hardy flowers, it's knowing this now and having written about it, when I encounter it, I'm so deeply moved because I know, okay, there's ancestors underfoot in that location. Yeah, and so it's a way, one of the things I say in the book is home is where your dead are buried. And it was a way of making home in this place, yeah.
It's so interesting because blue can be used for sad. It can be used for hopefulness. It can be used for happiness.
Contrapuntal.
Yes. Yeah. Why do you think blue represents so many different kinds of emotions?
I mean, I think part of it, there's probably some science behind it that is beyond my pay grade. But I think part of it, I do think there's something about the water and the skies. And I think that's why it's had such important spiritual symbolism in so many faith traditions. There's something about that power of the kind of the sublime landscape against which we feel so small and vulnerable, but also sort of gives us a sense of wonder and possibility. And so all of these emotions can sort of find their way into that encounter with nature. But I think that there's a way in which it's also its beauty that is why we want to use. Like I'm a fan of blue, obviously, but that there's something about the pleasure it gives us that makes us want to hold on to it in the wide variety of moments of human experience. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about blue jays.
Yes.
And you mentioned that blue jays, that in some folklore, that blue jays would visit hell to report on the misdeeds of white people.
Yes. You couldn't find one on a Friday, they would say, because that's the day they went. Yeah.
Do you know what the origins of this story and why blue jays?
I do not. I do not. But here's another little detail about blue jays. I love that they are not actually blue, but they have melanin. They're melanated, and they look blue because of the structure of their feathers. So it's just this, it's one of those stories that is powerful to me because it's a reminder that the people who were telling the story had a sense of ethics and decency that was in deep contrast to the society in which they live. So the Blue Jays know better, right? Even if these people in power don't know better, right? And so that answering back, I'm always interested in that answering back to injustice in the way that it appears, not just in political organizing and, and sort of formal writing, but in everyday wisdom. Yeah.
I want to talk about some of the objects that you discuss in the book. You discuss indigo a lot.
Yes.
The color, the creation of the dye, the role of it in the slave trade. But you begin with the myth about the origin of indigo. What is it?
Yeah, so I tell this story that that came from a secondhand source in the mid 20th century. There was a Liberian folktale about the origin of indigo, and and essentially it's a folktale that describes a person who is Asi, who is a woman who is a seer, who is essentially supposed to eat. You can eat bits of the sky, right? In this period, in this folklore, human beings can eat bits of the sky, but you're only supposed to do it in a very particular way. And she does it in a way that is contrary to what is appropriate, and winds up eating so much and getting sort of drunk on the eating the beauty of the sky that she neglects her infant child, who then dies. And then the folklore is that in exchange, it's a gift in exchange for her tears and anguish, indigo is granted to humanity. And so I reinterpreted this and I retold the story. But what I wanted to do in telling the story is to say this desire for blue objects, like this desire to possess blue, which is what it symbolized, is something that has always, that can cut two ways, as any kind of desire can. It can be something that is beautiful, but it can also be something that leads to destruction. That's before race. That story predates race and racialization. But then when we see what actually happens in the indigo trade, we see the desire for indigo, for something beautiful, actually being a justification for the deepest kinds of violences and injustice, right? So I entered the book with that story because I want to cue up this fact that race and racism are not natural, right? Cruelty to other human beings is not natural. It's something, though, that is produced by by greed and certain kinds of drives for possession that have led to devastating consequences in human history. And so it was a way to sort of to lead to that. Yeah.
I became obsessed with Wedgewood after reading your book. Okay? So Wedgewood has this history with abolition.
Yeah.
Yet we think of it as a certain sort of waspy.
Yeah. Well, it's that too. but also a sign of it, they had plates and medals that are actually, that are beautiful. And I have one that is sort of Wedgewood blue serving tray with the form of a kneeled enslaved man that says, "Am I not a brother?" And that became and what part of what made this important is that there was also lots of kind of material culture, like dishes and bowls that were a sign of the slave trade in some ways, so like they would say where they were from, and they were connected to, sugar plantations and the sugar industry. And so for Wedgewood to use that kind of material culture, the cookware, the plateware, to actually make an argument against the slave trade and against the use of those kind of symbols as a status symbol was powerful.
Let's talk about appearances.
Yes.
Black people, blue eyes. You talk about how blackness is defined and what role you should play in that definition. You write, as a Black American of a certain age, about the same age, I must admit that the thought of abandoning the one-drop rule feels like a dissolution of some of who we are. I want to keep the blue-eyed as well as the blue-black in our numbers. You discuss throughout history how the presence of blue-eyed Black people, some people have considered it a threat. How so?
Well, part of it is because of the proximity, the perceived proximity to whiteness, and that they could slip into whiteness without being detected. So there are these, I hesitate to use the word wonderful, fascinating lawsuits, criminal cases in where you have this sort of alarm about someone who's engaged in some kind of criminal behavior, and it's a blue-eyed Negro who's slipping in undetected into various spaces, and that I think it's important because I think particularly now when we're having different kinds of conversations about race, but to think about a people who are made by this relatively arbitrary rule, but then do make something of themselves. It's not as though the definition is only one that's imposed. It's one that's actually created from the inside out as well. So that was a kind of, a sign of the terror of any form of Blackness. Potentially intruding, and of course we have fears, and I talk about this of blue-black people as well. But in that spectrum is where you actually find the creation of all this culture and art. That is what I'm also concerned about.
Let's get our microphones out. We'll get to some of your questions in just a minute. You spend a couple of chapters writing about the history of the Democratic Republic of Congo from colonial times to modern day.
Yeah.
Why was this a part of the world that you wanted to spend so much extra time talking about?
Yeah. So there's a couple of reasons. One is that Congo, the culture of the Congo kingdom is so central to the formation of African American culture, and something that we don't talk about that much, but there's signs of it in so many places, particularly in places along the Gulf Coast and on the Sea Islands, the Low Country as well. And so, so that's an origin point. And I wanted to talk also about the history of the betrayal that the kingdom of the Congo kingdom experienced in its negotiations with Portugal as part of the way race is created. So they thought they were just negotiating as two kingdoms, and then they experienced racialization through the transatlantic slave trade. But then there are these echoes, right? So there's culture, there's repetition, there's an echo between the story, and I won't give it away, but for folks who haven't read it, but André Blouin, who was an anti-colonial activist, and W.E.B. Du Bois have similar stories of encounters with the violence of racist medical systems. And then Patrice Lumumba, and how important he was a figure for Black American activists, and how his story intersects with ours. So there are these sort of moments, and I do sort of arterial connections. I'm a scholar who has been rooted in the United States, but I always know that if you're doing Black studies and if you're doing African American studies, there's always these arterial connections to other parts of the globe and other peoples. And so I try to attend to several of those arteries. There's also a chapter on Haiti. And, in South America, and the book ends in the Caribbean. And so it's important for me to name that as part of the connection, and also part of how people create themselves, even in the modern period, right? You can't really tell the story of the freedom movement without also talking about anti-colonialism as much as people try to, right? Decolonization, yeah.
Let's take some questions from the audience. I see. Who's gonna?
This one over there.
There is. Oh, right here. Jordan's coming this way. Here she comes. Right there on the end.
Oh, the microphone's blue. In your acknowledgments, you related the book to being like a quilt. And so what did you feel was the most important story for you to kind of sew in that quilt? Like, what did you feel called to put into this quilt?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. And I'll just say, it is like a quilt, and also because blue and the blues of cotton that were the colors that Black laborers wore and freedom movement organizers wore as part of that story of quilting too. But I think, it's interesting. I wouldn't have said this at the beginning, but the most important story was the story of the deaths of my cousins over the past 2 years. Because one of whom, as he was dying, slept with a blue blanket. It was his favorite color. And we all wore blue, something blue to his funeral, and my aunt gave us seeds of blue flowers to plant afterwards. But it was important because, and then, sorry, so he passed away, and then as the book was in production, I had another cousin die. And the book is dedicated to the two of them. And it's important because as much of this book that I genuinely feel is glorious and beautiful, it's that confrontation with the devastation that and what it means to be able to create, to continue to live after that is really what I want to get at. And so I had to confront it in my own experience, in order to get to what I wanted the book to be.
Thank you for that question. Do we have more questions from in the back? There goes Simon.
Imani, thank you for your brilliance and for sharing it with the world.
Thank you.
Do you talk about in your book the theme, the 400-year-old theme of black and blue, blues being associated with the African American experience of dealing with what our ancestors dealt with, just in terms of living and life.
There's so much in the book about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
the blues and, yeah.
Awesome. And also in the book, do you touch on or talk about the reason behind blue-eyed black folks, the fact that African American and African women were raped from the time they left, actually marching onto the boats for the Middle Passage, and throughout the entire experience of captivity and enslavement, and therein lies the explanation for the variety of complexions and hair textures and eye colors.
Yes.
You do get that in the book.
In our
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Okay, and once again, thank you.
Thank you.
For your genius.
Oh, we're gonna have another
sharing
question up front. You got it.
Hi, less question, more comment. Your treatment of blueness and blackness in the book is extraordinary. And I was raised in a multiracial family, and Afro-Puerto Rican father and Jewish mother in urban New Jersey and then suburban New Jersey. My father worked for Wedgewood. We had a lot of Wedgewood.
There you go.
And then when we moved to Montclair, New Jersey, I encountered a lot of other people, not like us, economically and racially and otherwise, who also had Wedgewood. And I was like, this is interesting. Like, we eat off these plates too, right? Like, my stepfather, who was black, was a Brooklyn and then kind of sort of ish LA Dodgers fan. And so there was a lot of blue. Dodger blue. There was a lot of Dodger blue. And he died of AIDS, and we made quilts for him as part of the Names Project in the first years of that. And we had 4 panels, and one could not have been more blue.
Oh,
Thank you so much for
sharing
that was an extraordinary treatment of blueness and blackness and resonated so powerfully for me. So thank you.
So what you just said is, that's really much of what what I've hoped for with the book, that it actually really encourages, it resonates with people, so their stories of blue begin to come forward. The other thing I'll say is there was a chapter on Vieques that didn't make it in the book, and I posted part of it on my Substack, but that may, because there is also a really interesting way to tell the story through Afro-Puerto Rican history too. Yeah.
We're going to hear some great music in just a few minutes. And you write about the concept of the blue note. What's the blue note?
So the blue note is the heart of Black music and the heart of American music too. The bent note, the worried note, the note between notes, often flat, and it is conceived of as a note that is the language that is often used, and I think is mischaracterization, is that it's not a natural note, but it's that if we think about it in the context of Western music, it's the outlier. But in the context of our music, it's what makes the music what it is, right? And it gives it its fullness and its emotional complexity. And I think for me, it's the essence of what makes the music a language. And so I sit in the blues, but also in the blue note, and try to think about what this means in terms of how do we think about Blackness itself. That it's not, we start not just think about it as the outlier that actually frames the project, but actually think about it on its own terms. And there's just something about the fact that it makes the entire world has been captivated by it, by the music that relies upon this tradition. So even though, we can, obviously there's lots of evidence that many people in the world don't love Black people. People love what Black people create. And there's something in that, saying that you don't get that creation without an extraordinary people. So
I think we're going to leave it there. Imani Perry, thank you so much for your time. Are you ready? Are you ready for some music?
Over the Moon.
Bilal is a singer who fuses jazz, soul, R&B, and more into his work. His latest album is called Just Brightness. He'll be at the Mayo Performing Arts Center tomorrow night. Esperanza Spalding is in the middle of a weeks-long residency at the Blue Note, finishing up March 2nd. Here she comes to the stage, also guitarist Randy Runyon. Please welcome Bilal, Esperanza Spalding, and Randy Runyon.
Sorry.
Over time, I've been building my castle of love. Though you never knew it was of you I've been dreaming. I've come much too far for you now to say that I have to throw my castle away.
Oh, the dream I have picked out perfect come true. Though you never ever knew it was you I was dreaming. The Sandman has come from too far away for you to say come back some other day. And if you don't believe them, they do.
Dreams
do come true.
do come true for in my dreams. Come true when I looked at you, and
maybe too if you do believe
you would too be overjoyed,
overjoyed.
over love, over me. All the hearts I have painfully turned every stone,
Just to find that I found what I searched to discover.
searching. I've come much too far for me now to find the love that I sought can never be mine. And
Believe that they do.
oh, they do come true.
Or did my dreams
Come true when I looked at you, and
maybe too if you believe
overjoyed, over love, over me. And though the odds say impossible, what do they know?
What do they know?
For in romance, a true love needs a chance, and maybe with a chance we would find you too, like I'm overjoyed, over love, over me.
I could just listen to him. Can you play more? No. How did that come together, Bilal? How did you guys decide what song to play, how to play it? Tell us a little bit how that came about.
Well, I think it was through a
Right up in here.
conversation.
Which one? Okay, we're gonna do the. I feel like we're on a. This is not Star Search. Which is the other one?
Price is Right.
No.
America's Got Talent.
Soul Train.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, it was a phone conversation, and I think it was an arrangement of Esperanza. So.
Esperanza, you put together for Harper's Bazaar a playlist, and the second person on your playlist was
Ash was the first.
he was the first on your playlist was Bilal.
Yeah.
What do you admire about Bilal?
Yeah. Oh gosh. That's a whole other conversation, like a whole deep dive. I would love to write a paper about that. But I feel that daring of freedom, the daring of giving oneself permission to be free and to offer forth to the world what you heard and what you truly felt and truly believed. And as much as we say we value that, I actually find it kind of a rare quality. And I really hear that radiating from your work. And I love that album so much. And it's funny because, well, I don't want us to give a spoiler to the next song, but yeah, I'll just give it. There was this one song on it, and like I hear that song in my head all the time. I love it so much, but I didn't want to. When we were talking about what songs to play, I was kind of like thinking of that in my head, but I didn't want to say it for some reason. And then he was like, "What about Quantum Universe? You mentioned it on the playlist," and I was like, "Okay." So, yeah.
I want to talk about both your records that you've had out. You wrote, "I am a jazz musician first, Bilal." How did that shape your approach to your record?
Well, just like she said, the jazz approach really opens up everything for me and kind of like tears down the walls. And you can be free with it, or you can use it to be analytical. So, it's a good medium to kind of like open my scope.
For your record, you experimented with, what's his name, Milton Nascimento? Is that his name?
You got some homework, young lady.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I just say that because
Milton
he's like
Nascimento.
you talking about the grandmother's room as the portal.
Yes.
He is a portal, and so many ones that we know and love in North American music culture found their permission through the portal of him. And it's something about the way like the global South legends don't like rise up to North America in the acknowledgement or notoriety. And he's one of those ones. You know, Herbie was down in the 60s checking out his songs with his little portable recording device, recording songs that Milton was playing, you know, like, oh, what's that about? Philip Bailey credits Milton Nascimento with giving him permission to sing the way he sang. You know, in the DNA. He is the DNA of so much that's happened, but I digress. Milton Nascimento is how you say his name.
I appreciate the help.
No. Sorry. That was a little rude. I'm sorry. I take that back. But just,
It's a long story.
we all have homework.
It's a long story.
We all have homework.
What have you learned from him? We talked about how everybody else learned from him. What did you learn from him?
There's so many things. One that really pops out is, well, the influence of loving someone, and all the valences of love. I learned a new valence of love for like an elder, and I learned about how the offering of that particular kind of encouraging love just like unlocked or made like way for him to find more of himself. And maybe sometimes we think that the direction of like support is going one way from people that we admire who are like older than us or whatever. And I think I learned like, whoa, just the power of making like legible the love that you have for someone is part of the reciprocity, I guess, of being guided and helped by the ones that we admire. And that was a very powerful lesson that I want to get better at practicing with, you know, other ones that oh my God, I could never give back for all you've given me, you know, just, yeah.
Bilal, I understood that you started painting, or you did paint during the course of making your album. What led you to painting?
Well, I had always sketched, but Corona, really. Because I wasn't able to perform or gig, and you couldn't be around musicians, you know, so there was like pretty much no studio, so I brought paints for my kids to do, but they did one painting and then just never did it again. And so in telling them like, look, it's so fun. I wound up being the only one painting, and then everybody's like, oh, then you're the painting. And I started saying, don't touch the paint. This is my. so that's kind of how it happened.
In Imani's beautiful book, there's so much discussion of the blues and rhythm and blues and the blue note. What do rhythm and blues? What does that mean to you?
Exactly that. You know, rhythm and blues, life is that, you know, the way I look at it. And, well, the blues kind of evolves every, like, I'd say 20, 30 years or so. So I think rhythm and blues was like maybe the last evolution of it, because it had a little bit of, I don't know, maybe a gospel mix. So maybe that's where the rhythm part came from.
What does the blues mean to you, Esperanza?
I don't feel qualified to speak on that right in this moment. But I think of Lineage. The first thing that's coming up is Lineage, and something about like knowing what you actually have the blues to sing, like what you actually have to sing about, what blues you actually have to sing about. And I think about the ways that maybe when we study people's performances of their own blues, it's easy in like a pedagogical context to think you can emulate the performance, but it's not. It's like decontextualized from the actual heart of the sentiment that led to that performance. So I guess I think about lineage of like what was making the ones before me sing the blues, and I think about if I'm going to have a relationship with a blues or the blue note, making sure that it's the origin is my life, the origin is my actual depth of feeling or ancestral feeling. That's what I think of.
Do a quick bit of homework. You're going to be tomorrow. You're playing at the Mayo Center. Yes. Tell us what we can expect.
Well, we're gonna have Randy gonna be playing with us. It's gonna be a concert. We're gonna mix in just the music I've been doing over the years. It should be pretty cool.
And you finish up your residency on March 2nd?
Yeah, I'm mad I can't go to that.
What has the residency meant to you?
Whew.
And the Blue Note?
I'm being reminded of the things I most love and the things that maybe I convinced myself I loved in music. But when I'm doing them every night, I find out maybe I don't love it as much as I thought. So that's been very actually healing for me to be like, this is what I actually really like. And the set is becoming more and more that and less of the things I feel I'm supposed to do. Yeah. Ooh.
The next song we're going to hear, you already gave it away, but tell us what we're going to hear next.
It's a tune off the. Sorry. It's a tune off of my latest record, Adjust Brightness, entitled Quantum Universe. So.
Quantum universe.
In the language of the universe, no words, only love. I was running from the light into the dark, just trying to find my way back to the divine, but you can't run away from God, the God in you. Now who is God? I'm walking with the sun in my heart. I realize it's all a part of me. Stars above, falling rain, falling love. Oh, how do we believe that we are only make believe? Oh, how do we forget that we are only make believe? Believe in a quantum universe. Working all days, then you realize that it's all slim picking. Working 9 to 5 till your heart aches. Thinking out loud now, who is I kidding? Quantum universe, will you open the door? Give me a holiday, give me a holiday. When you remember the dream, make it reality. You are who you believe. You are who you believe. Light comes after dark. Just open your heart, close your eyes to see. When you return again, right back where you started from. And on until you break the chain. Oh, how do we forget that we will only make
reality. Make your reality. Make your reality. Make it reality. Make it reality. Make it quantum universe. Make it reality. Make it reality. Make it reality. Make it reality. Make it
That's thank you to Esperanza, Spalding, and Bilal for that amazing performance. We got
and Randy. Runyon.
and Randy. Esperanza's gonna get out of here and head over to the Blue Note. She's got another performance tonight. Thanks, of course, to Imani Perry, who'll be signing books in the library out front. I want to thank all our partners at the New York Public Library for hosting us here. And thank you to all the folks from Park Boulevard for making it look so nice and helping it for our virtual viewers. Thanks to WNYC producers and engineers who run this event. Time for our March book club. I'm very excited to announce that we will be reading Mothers and Sons by Pulitzer Prize finalist Adam Haslett. This novel tells the story of a lawyer here in New York City who is forced to confront a night of violence that led him to become estranged from his mother 20 years earlier. Adam Haslett will be joining us right here on April 2nd. That will be the book club event for March. Mark your calendars, and we'll meet you back here in a month. Have a good night.